So what are some of the major things that men bring to you in the work that they do on their marriage? Like, what are the most common complaints, issues that you're working with men on a daily basis?
That's a great question. Usually, when men come to my table, obviously the platform is the Dad Edge, but most guys come to my table because they want one-on-one coaching for marriage, or they not necessarily one-on-one coaching, but it's usually always has to do with marriage. And usually, when I ask men, what do they want more of? It's they want better communication, with their wives. They want a deeper connection. They want to be able to lead better. I would say I deal with a lot of nice guys, you know,
Hmm.
who
What do you mean by that?
yeah. So Robert Glover wrote a book not too terribly long ago. Well, actually, it's been a while now since he's wrote that book. Now I think about it. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I still think it's like past couple of years, but I think that book has been in existence for like 12, 13 years, something like that. But he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I'll never forget when someone recommended that book to me when I was like just starting podcast back in 2015. I was like, No More Mr. Nice Guy. That sounds like, what is that all about? And I read the book, and I always tell this to all my clients or even friends or relatives. I was like, it's the best book you ever read. It'll give you so much enlightenment, and it'll piss you off at the same time because you'll see yourself in it so much. But yeah, he talks about what he calls the three covert contracts in that book. And basically the covert contract is a nice guy is, and there's nothing wrong with a nice guy as we kind of think about it, but a nice guy has these three tendencies, and I'm going to try to remember them, but I know one of them is, if I meet your expectations, you will meet mine. And the idea behind that is, if I meet your expectations and try to fulfill all your needs, then you will do that for me automatically without even me communicating it. And usually that doesn't happen. That creates a lot of resentment in a guy. So that's the guy who like does all the dishes, he cleans the house, and then he just wants some intimacy. It doesn't happen, then he gets upset about it. Um, if I live the second covert contract, I believe, is if I live I want to live a problem free life. If I'm a good person, I'll live a problem free life, and that is completely unattainable. Like even if you operate with, the best of intentions, things are going to happen. There's going to be struggles, but a nice guy gets really upset and resentful when things don't necessarily go his way, especially if he's trying to operate at what he deems as a high level. And then the last one, I believe, is oh, if I'm a nice guy, everyone will like me. So a nice guy also wants to be liked by everybody. And when that doesn't happen, because that is not even possible. You can try to be
Yeah.
the whatever, and that's not going to happen. But there's a lot of resentment when that happens too. But the nice guy, if you've ever, I'll close with this. If you've ever seen the movie Crazy Stupid Love with Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling, it's a great movie. It was made back in 2011. Steve Carell, any movie with him is funny. And Ryan Gosling's a great actor. I love him too. But like, Steve Carell is the ultimate nice guy, and he's married. And then in the very beginning of the movie, he finds out his wife had an affair. But he's just like, he does the exact same things that I just shared in the covert contracts, and then his life just kind of goes to ruin. Then he meets Ryan Gosling, who he's kind of portrayed as a womanizer in the movie, but what he is he's the perfect example of, I think, minus the womanizing part, a perfect example of a man who is not the nice guy, but is not like the toxic masculinity like Andrew Tate. Like, he's right there in the middle. If you really pull back the onion layers in that movie and watch how Ryan Gosling operates, he operates, in ways where he's playful. He doesn't take life too seriously when he interacts with people. Like, he's not attached to outcomes. So like, he'll strike up a conversation with a woman, and if she bites, great, and if she doesn't, he just rolls it off his shoulder, no big deal. But like, many guys can't operate like that, and
Yeah.
plus, like, the way he interacts with people, the way he dresses, that kind of thing, it's all for a purpose. And we kind of lose that over time as men.
Yeah, 100%. Being a nice guy is like just trying to people please, make
Yeah.
sure everybody likes you. Good
Yes.
luck with that, my friend. Not going to work well.
Right.
So a lot of guys come to you in their marriage dealing with some of the nice guy stuff. What kind of complications does being a nice guy create in marriage specifically?
So the dynamic that I've seen the most, and by the way, I'm a recovering nice guy, so I can like I speak from this not from the perspective
Very
of my
nice.
clients, but also like I've walked this for like probably a good decade and a half, and even before my wife and I got married, relationships before her, oh my gosh, it was brutal. So
Were you married to your wife pre nice guy transition?
no, after for sure. So
So you
like
guys got married and then you were still a nice guy and then yeah. Okay.
yeah, so I'll even put it like I'll just use myself as an example. So like
Go for
the
it.
way I operated in our marriage was exactly that first one. If I meet all of her expectations, she will meet mine, even without me communicating them. So I was
Okay.
the guy who like did the dishes loud so she could hear it. I would like take out the trash and like as you take out the trash, she's like, oh, I ran into the wall as I take out this trash. Just like it's just like, oh, I just wanted to get a little bit of appreciation.
Coming in like, oh, there's so much grass I just cut.
Right, exactly. Like it was that stuff. And then like when I go to her, for like let's just say intimacy, because that's the easiest thing to, like for sex or whatever. And she'd be like, I'm not in the mood. And be like, I did it, I just did all this crap,
Yeah.
and then I get resentful. Then I'd pout, which by the way, the only time to ever pout when you get rejected for sex is never, because it's
Yeah.
repulsive to a woman. And I just pout about it and I get mad and then I disconnect. And then I get
But
this thing in my head of like, well, if you're not going to initiate, or if I'm done initiating, you're just going to do it. And then like that was like the worst dynamic, because if I'm disconnected from her and I pout, she's not going to want a man like that, and I had to learn that one.
yeah, let's stop it there for the sex for a minute. Like, um, that's got to be really common, and that's got to be one of the most common conversations that you're having with men in their marriages.
It is. Yeah. The whole, and the sex
Can you
is,
define pouting, by the way, specifically? Like stonewalling, I'm upset. Like don't talk to me cold shoulder because we didn't have sex. Is that what you're
oh
saying?
yeah, man. Oh yeah. So like, actually, what I'll do is I'll share an example and I'll also share an example of when this finally clicked for me, when I really, really understood it. This was probably 7 years ago. It was one of those things where we hadn't had sex for like a week or two. I don't remember. And I was like, God bless. I was like, I really want to initiate, but I don't want to be rejected. And we
Mhm.
were still pretty frequent with it, but like it had been, I call it a week. I don't know. So I go to make a move, and we're laying in bed and she's like, hey, she's like, I'm sorry, just, tonight I'm exhausted. Like I'm just not in the mood tonight. And I was like, I
Mm.
was like, all right, fine. And she's like, are you mad? I'm like, no, yes,
Yeah,
you know what
might
I
as well
mean?
be yes.
Yeah. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. And she's like, no, seriously, are you upset? And I'm like, no, it's fine. She's like, no, you're not. And I was like, and then she looked at me, she grabbed me by the hands and she said, can I tell you something? And I was like, yeah. She goes, when I tell you that I'm not in the mood, I hope you understand I'm just saying no to the situation. I am not saying no to you. I love having sex with you. I'm attracted to you. Like I love doing it. I really, really do. It's just there are times during the day or night, especially she's like, especially night. Like it's really sometimes hard for me because I am just completely exhausted. She's like, but it's never you. It's never, ever, ever you. And I don't know what it was about hearing that, but it was just like, so it's the situation. It's not actually me, because I would take it so personal.
Yeah.
And ever since then, if I initiate, like, and she's like, I'm not in the mood, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, cool. And I literally mean that too, because I know we're probably going to do it the next day or the day after that. And
Yeah.
she's like, are you mad? And I'm like, no, no. I was like, I know you want me. I know you're attracted to me. Like, I'm not, no, I know we're good. Like, I would be more concerned if we went months without it, but we don't. But and that relieves like so much pressure on her, and it actually makes her more attracted to me. And that's the same thing with other men and their wives. Like if they can
Yeah.
be more calm about that, not take it personally, and just it's no to the situation, not the man. I think a lot of more men would probably not take it so personal, which it took me a freaking long time to get that, man.
It seems like that's the like the big the like the catalyst for a really difficult dynamic when a guy says, I don't want to initiate because I don't want to get rejected.
Oh yeah.
And it seems like the like the key there is to not take it personal, to just because I mean too, like I think less frequently for guys, but I know for myself, like there's times I'm not in the mood for sex. Like I'm just not right now. Like it's just not a good time.
Yeah.
And that makes so much sense to me. if I tell my partner like I'm just not like honestly I'm just not really feeling it right now. My body's just not really feeling into that. That makes sense to me. But whenever it's her on the other hand saying it, it immediately goes like, oh, I'm not the man I think I am. Oh, she thinks I'm ain't shit. Oh, she like the rejection piece.
Yeah, it's a
So
real thing, man. And one thing I want to share too is sex is a result of everything else that happens outside the bedroom. So,
mm,
you know, a man's three basic needs in a relationship is to feel respected, appreciated, and validated. And when we are validated, like when we have sex, we feel extremely validated, right? So it's like, I'm good
yeah,
enough, I'm desired, I'm wanted. Like, the physical aspect of sex for a man, like it's like I've talked to other men about this, and it's like the physical release, the orgasm for a man is like 5% of it, right? But the 95% is being wanted, being desired, being accepted, like that kind of thing. It's like the ultimate thing. And then for a woman, her three needs are to feel seen, heard, and safe. So if each one of you are fulfilling those three needs for each other, that's when the relationship actually feels really, really good.
where'd you pick those up, man?
Yeah, it was from a podcast guest. I don't even remember. I put it over and over and over in the book, Pursue Legendary Fatherhood in the marriage section, but I can't remember who exactly said it. But when I heard that, I was like, oh man, that makes total sense.
Hmm. Three needs of a man: respected, appreciated, validated, and for her, seen, heard, and safe.
Yep. Yeah.
I like that. I like that conversation too, man. About sex happens everywhere else first,
Yep.
you know, and that's like, how do you though? How do you approach this without beginning to feel transactional? I'll do this so that you give me sex. So like, kind of back to even the trash can analogy, kind of thing we were talking about earlier, where it's not about like I'm going to do all this stuff so that later when I ask for sex, it's a yes, but I'm gonna focus on doing the things that sexual currency was what I had heard someone describe it as, like all the actions you do with your partner that you don't do with someone else because they're sexual in nature, a pat on the butt, like a kiss on the neck, kind of like just the sexual things without any kind of tie to them as a means of trying to uh, add coins in the jar, so to speak, of sexual charge. So then later on, it's easier to flow. Does that resonate?
100%. In fact, man, that's a great question. I've never been asked a question quite like that. But that brings up a real thing where, you go back that if you're keeping score, right? If it's
Yeah.
like the pennies in the jar, right? I'm keeping score. I'm going to do these things to get. One thing I've noticed about just women in general, even kids, is they can detect an agenda from a mile away. Like they're bloodhounds for that. They really do. They can pick up from a mile away. Like, are you genuinely interested in having a conversation with me, or are you just trying to get something? And I
Yeah.
think if you approach so here's two different ways that human beings approach basically actually anything, but let's just call a relationship with your wife. So m- people will go to a conversation with expectation and agenda. So like for instance, I'll go and want to talk to my wife about something, right? And this could be like managerial, like with kids and chores and roles and management and that kind of thing. That's going to be expected. Like, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about, but then also being tied to the outcome, the expectation, instead of being curious. So if we go to a conversation with expectation and agenda, we're actually not allowing that connection to even really happen because we're so tied to what we want to talk about or the subject that we need to talk about. And then I want it to turn out like this.
Yeah.
Versus the opposite of that is going to a conversation with curiosity and appreciation. So I'll give you an example. Like when my wife and I go, we go out on a date day every Friday. It's a non-negotiable. We do like a lunch, a brunch. We go hiking. We work out. We do several different things
A
on
day.
Friday afternoons.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Friday afternoons is our date time. And I will purposely come to that conversation and many others throughout the week, but that one in particular where I have no expectation and I have no agenda. I'm just genuinely curious and I'm appreciative of our time. And
Hmm.
that type of approach, it's almost like being out on a first date, because like
Yeah.
you're just so curious and appreciative that you're with that person that you just want to talk to them and have a deep connection with them. And that's the same approach that I take with my wife is that because she can sniff it a mile away if I have an agenda. But if I'm genuinely curious, it also makes me a 10x better listener I mean, because we really know when people are like deeply listening to us or if they're just going through the motions.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that you end up having um, more of what you want, like more intimacy, more opportunities for connection whenever you kind of just let go of the desired outcome of intimacy and just decide, I'm going to be present, I'm going to be loving, I'm going to add to the sexual currency, and whatever ends up happening happens.
I find that when I interact with her like that, like I'll just say for what it is, she wants to like rip my clothes off.
Yeah.
And but I don't do it for that reason. Like if we have sex, great. If we don't, I know we're gonna do it in the next couple days or whatever. But what I notice is it's almost like when you're sitting there, like we go to this same restaurant almost every Friday. We just love it there. And it's almost like nobody else is in the room. Like that's how deep the conversation is. Like, and your body language has to say a certain thing, your voice tone has to say a certain thing, even your eyes, the way you look at her has to say a certain thing. And what I notice when you do those things, right, your body communicates a ton. 93% of what we communicate is through body language and through tonality. But if my body language is like more open and I'm facing her, or I'm sitting side by
Yeah.
side with her and I'm just kind of slightly looking at her, if
Yeah.
I'm just gazing into her eyes and like listening to every single word that she's saying, almost like we're on a first date, that completely changes the energy in the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Pulls them to you, man.
What's that?
It pulls her to you. Like
Yeah.
it's magnetic.
Yeah.
How do you read any Wineland stuff or data stuff?
Yeah.
Learn
Yeah.
Wineland, David Data.
Yeah. I actually referred to data in my book a little bit.
How much of the men's work do you do moves into some of the more tantric sexuality is the best way I'd probably describe a lot of what they talk about. Any of it involving more of the like more tantric sexual practices?
Not for us. We're just, to be honest, we're not really wired like that. I don't even know if we really enjoy it, and nothing against that. We've never really explored it, but like that's not really an area where we like have ever really explored. So I can't really talk too much about that.
Yeah.
But but I would say it's like what we have is ideal for both of us.
Yeah, 100%, man. One of the first things you mentioned about why when guys come to you, they're looking for a few different things is communication.
Yeah.
What specifically, and of course, I've got a couple questions I'd like to ask you about that, but what specifically when you talk about men having difficulties in communications with their partner?
Yeah, so I think, like I said before we started recording today, like I like to keep things super simple for men. So when it comes to communication, I like, the quality of our life and the quality of our relationships resides in the quality of our questions. So normally when we see our wives or we see our kids or anybody else, it's like, how was your day? It's a default question that usually results in a really default answer that doesn't create any connection whatsoever. So if we want better outcomes and we want better communication, we have to actually start with better questions. So like I was trained in a coaching organization called Exchange, which is based on a premise called appreciative inquiry, which is it's basically being able to have great conversations and also facilitate as a coach through really meaningful solution based questions that are deep. So
Mm.
it's really like the best of the past, the best of the current, and the best of what we could co-create together. So a question I would ask my wife might be something like, instead of "How was your day?" I mean, this is super simple. Is say, "What was the best part of your day today?" And tell
Yeah.
me why it was so meaningful to you, right? And when I ask that question, I'm not going to get fine, good, crazy, boring. I'm going to get some sort of story that elevates our connection, our energy together. Because when people are telling you something that they're proud of, something that like she could be like, I talked to my mom today. I haven't talked to her in a week. It was so good catching up with her. Like, and then being able to expand and be like, that's awesome. What'd you guys talk about? So it's like one question could easily steamroll into a 15-minute conversation that just brings you to life. So
Yeah.
that's an easy one. Yeah, another one you could ask your wife too is, think of a time when you and I were like incredibly connected. Like you actually thought that we were unbreakable. What was I doing in that season? What were you doing in that season? And
Mm.
why did you pick that season in particular? Like, and as soon as you see your wife go, oh my gosh, that's a really good question. And then she's thinking about it. And as she's thinking about it, she's actually reliving it with you. And then she tells you about it, which
Yeah.
what you want in communication is not an exchange of words. You actually want connection.
Hmm. How do you really encourage guys to create that connection more with their partner if they want to lead that? Quality questions is a great start.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, there's a lot of managerial things that happen, when you're married. You got the kids, you got the activities, you got school, sports, bills, all that stuff, right? But it's really just creating better conversations that could be anywhere from 3 minutes long to 3 hours long, right?
Yeah.
So like last night, my wife and I, it was a really odd night because like we've got 4 boys. So there are people in and out of our house constantly, and our house is never our own. But last night it was kind of odd. It was just the two of us. All the boys were out just hanging out with friends, and it was just the two of us, and we were just sitting on the couch. And we had a show on, but we were holding hands. And I just started asking her questions about the previous week and the next week ahead. Like I was like, what was something that happened to you last week that I don't know about that was really, really cool for you?
Your wife
And
loves this about you, by the way, Larry. Just saying, man. Good.
here's the warning though.
Good shit,
Here's the
bro.
warning. If you haven't done this with I always tell my clients this, man. I was like, you haven't done this for years and you break out a question like that, she's gonna look at you like you have two heads and like, what are you doing? Right?
He's like,
My
are you
wife,
cheating on me?
my wife, man, still to this day, every now and again she'll throw it in there, but like she'll be like, "Are you dad edging me right now?"
Oh,
And
that's
I'll be,
hilarious.
yeah.
Are you edging me right now, brother?
Yeah, you're edging me right now. Which is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I spoke to a group of high school students like a month ago,
Oh,
and
brutal.
and told them the name of my platform, and
Brutal, bro.
I was like, yeah, you can all laugh about it. Like I didn't know what it meant back then. And it wasn't meant what it was meant when I was growing up. But anyway, but like I always tell guys, I warn them. I was like, your wife is going to react to this because she's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you asking me that? And here's what you say back. You actually just are as transparent as all get out. Just be honest. Just say, like, listen, over the past couple of years, I think we can maybe both agree that I haven't really been intentional with conversations with you, and I've gotten a little lazy, and I'm learning new ways to communicate with you. And so if you're sensing a difference, that's the difference. So here's the question again.
Just
What
own it,
was
bro.
what was the cool? Yeah, just own it. And then as soon as you own it and you're not trying to be sly about it, she's like, oh, okay, that provides again that safety and that certainty for her of like, okay, now I know what's going on.
Yeah. Um, Communication. Another question I have for you, man, is um, attachment styles from in the world of attachment styles, anxious, secure, avoidant, that kind of stuff. Read about it, heard about it, been
Yep.
in your world at all? Okay. So like, secure attachment, ideally we feel our needs, we speak up for our needs, and we ask for our needs to be met, and then give grace to the person if they are available for them, vice versa. How can a man go about communicating his needs to his partner when they're not being met? Obviously we don't want to, like, what's the worst case scenario if your needs are not being met? What's the worst way to do it? And then how would you encourage men to go about communicating that?
So I think avoidant is a really bad tactic. I think it's a really good way to create just a brick wall between you and your wife. So if you're avoidant, the way that she takes it, number one, avoiding is not leadership, right? I love the secure attachment because I just taught this skill in our group called, the difference between expectations and boundaries. Right. So, and I'll give you an example of a client that I had that I shared, a way to have a conversation with him about this. But I think the best way that you can express your needs is number one, you've got to be calm, right? You can't go to your wife and be like, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? Like, I don't like this and I don't like that. If you really think about it, when we get into conflict, we're actually fighting for things that we don't want anymore, but we actually never tell the person what it is that we do want, which is really, really frustrating for them. So an avoidant going back to avoidant will be like, well, I'm just going to be quiet about it because number one, I don't want to be rejected. Number two, I don't want to deal with, whatever's going to happen, the result of this conversation. So I'm just going to avoid it. And what happens when we avoid is we get resentful. And when we get resentful, we get disconnected. And the way that she takes that is you're not here. You're just existing. You're not aware. You're not leading. And it's insanely unattractive to a woman. A man who can be secure. So like I'll give you an example of a client that I had literally just the other day. He felt that he works, and so does his wife. They have 3 kids, and he feels, he's like, I am doing most of the household chores and it's driving me freaking crazy, man. He's like, and I want to have a conversation with her. And he also found out that she had an emotional affair, which didn't help things. And he's like, if I have this conversation with her, it might push her even further. Like, and I was like, so what do you want to, what are you going to do
Uh,
about it? He's like, I'm just not going to say anything. I was like, can I give you a way to say this to her that will be calm, that will also show ownership, and then it will also create a boundary? Because the difference, many people don't know this. The difference between expectation and a boundary is you have zero control over if someone meets your expectations or not. Like it's a clearly defined thing. Hey, I need this or want this, right? But and then you release it. So you release it, meaning like that person has full autonomy to basically meet the expectation or not. The boundary is something that is totally in our control. And most people get these completely backwards, or they actually think a boundary is an expectation. You're crossing my boundaries, right? We say that one. A boundary is something you will do that you enforce, and enforce sounds like punishment, but it's not punishment, but it's something that you will do that you have complete control over, that you own. So like he was really confused when I told him this, and it took like 30 minutes to unpack it. But basically he walked away with a script like this. He said, hey, I'd like to have a conversation around some of our roles and who owns what chore in the house. Because I think if we identify, you do these things, I do these things, it will create clarity for both of us, and we're not going to wonder who's going to do what. And I think it'll actually lower our stress a bit. And
yep.
here's the boundary that I have is after these roles are clearly defined, and if expectations aren't met, I'm not going to be quietly resentful. I'm actually going to come to you with a really calm conversation around how we can actually make this even better.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more so I can get a good grasp on the boundary thing, the difference between an expectation versus a boundary.
Yeah. So an expectation is, so like for instance, an expectation is I clearly communicate to you what it is that I need or want of that expectation. And then what I do is I release it. That's one of the most important things, because the other person has to choose whether or not they're going to do it. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they do not communicate the expectation, or they don't communicate it clearly. So I'll give you another example of this personally. I have a 10-year-old, and I told my client the same story. I was like, I need you to clean your room once a week. That's still not clear to him. And plus his version of a clean room and my version are completely different. So I have to say, hey, by 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, your room needs to be cleaned. That's the expectation of this house. And what a clean room looks like is your toys aren't shoved underneath your bed. They're in the toy box. Your clean clothes are in the drawers. Your dirty clothes are off the closet floor and put into the hamper, and your shoes are in the cubbies. That's a clean room. And that's done by 10 a.m. And so that's the clear expectation. Normally, another mistake that people make is, well, I should only have to say it once. An adult human brain usually needs to hear an expectation at least 3 times before it sinks in, and a kid needs to hear it at least 7. So if there's ever unclear, you want to have a conversation and be like, what did you understand about this expectation? And I'll have my 10-year-old repeat it back to me. And then the boundary that I have with him, I said, hey, I really want you to have your iPad. I know you have a good time on your iPad. And the deal is you get your iPad for an hour on Saturdays, but not until your room is clean. So if the room is not clean, I get to hold on to your iPad until that task is done.
Yeah. Seems like the boundary is much more something that I do myself. This is for me. This is where this is where I stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The boundary is what you will do if the expectation is not met.
Yeah. The communication part is really hard, man. Like, I think too, for a lot of guys, like when we have emotional needs, it um, feels like you're being a wuss to say, I need more of something from you. And like, I love the word invitation. I love to think about that word when it comes to communicating my needs. If I'm when I'm in a situation where my partner, I would like to get a certain medium of love from them, be it acts of service or words, or Like one thing that's really helped me a lot is just remembering all of the love I receive from that person and all the ways they give it to me. And then if there's a specific way that I'd like to receive love, maybe I want to hear some words that day, or maybe want something done for me that would make me feel really special or loved, to like try to wash myself in the appreciation I feel for that person and the way they make me feel in those ways, before then settling in a place where it's kind of fun. Like, I really love to play checkers with you. I'd really love to explore this idea. I'd love to go on a walk. Like, see if you can communicate what you'd love to feel from them. I'd love to hear what your 3 favorite things are about me, because that would just make me have the greatest day in the world. That's such a different way to go about it versus, like you were talking about earlier, just like not getting your needs met, getting quiet, and then almost making, like, I like when people say, don't act out your needs, communicate them, be an adult. Then you're waiting on her to be like, what's wrong? Which is like not a good thing,
It's not. And yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Please go for it.
No. So I think I'll give an example of this. So I think number one, your approach needs to come from a very calm and secure place. And you need to be okay with your own needs. A lot of guys are like, well, maybe that's not okay. It is okay. What's not okay is if you don't communicate them and just expect them, because that's like a cancer that will start in a relationship that metastasizes and eats away at it. It's these unspoken expectations and needs. So I'll share a perfect example of this. I interviewed a woman by the name of Alana Pratt, who is an intimacy and sex coach, and she's amazing. And she taught me about the approach for a woman. So again, seen, heard, and safe, right? The safety button for a woman is the most important. And when I say safety to a new client or a new guy I'm talking to, they're like, well, she knows I'm not going to hurt her. I was like, I'm not talking about physically. Yes, you need to be able to protect her. You need to physically not hurt her. I was like, but there's all kinds of other elements for a woman when it comes to safety. So parental safety. If you guys have kids, she needs to know that you're the calm dad, not the trigger happy dad, because nothing will agitate that safety button more than seeing you blow up at your kids uncontrollably. And she's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't even know what to do with myself right now. It causes a huge fight or flight in them. Then there's emotional safety, right? Where, hey, can I come and talk to you about things, whether it's about you or it's about the kids or my friends or my mother or whatever else, and you're not going to fix my problems. You're actually just going to listen to me, right? I need that kind of safety. There's mental safety, like, mental health and all these different things. There is financial safety. A woman can't be married to a broke man. The good news about that is they've done studies with this. The women who are like 20 years old and marry the 80-year-old for his gazillion dollars, those are really rare, right? But like what most women will have said in polls and studies is, I want my basic needs met and a little more. That's what makes me feel safe. So what is a little more? A little more is, if, my 12-year-old needs a new pair of football cleats, Jessica, if she has to call me and say, do we have enough money in the checking account? These cleats are $200, or can I just buy them the cleats? Like, that's what they're really talking about. So like the safety thing also comes with our approach. So like the nice guy, like the one who's really insecure, even avoiding it, be like, hey, so I kind of want to talk to you about something. And I don't want you to be mad, or I don't want this to sound weird, and it's okay if you say no. It really is. Like, that is repulsive to a woman, right? Because we are so tied to the outcome, and they feel that neediness, and neediness is repulsive to a woman. So Alana really taught me this approach of like, you can just simply, in a very calm, loving way, say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z. It's totally fine if you don't want to, but I would feel it'd be unfair for me not to at least tell you what those needs are. And then you can decide whether or not this is something you want to do. So like an example that I tested this, and I went to Jessica, and I told Alana this too. There was something I wanted to do with her in the bedroom for like 5 years, but I was too chicken shit to ask. And we're not like crazy weirdos or anything like that. It was something really, really simple, but I'll keep that part private. But it was just something I always kind of wanted to do. And so I went to her, and after that podcast, I went to Jessica with the exact same thing. I said, hey, I want to share something with you. I was like, I've been holding this back for a long time, but it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And I literally use this type of voice tone, just something I've been thinking about for a long time. And it's something I really want to try. And I would feel that it's a bit unfair for me not to tell you this. And then you can decide whether or not, you're good with it. And
Yeah.
she looked, and I told her, and she's like, yeah, great. Sounds awesome. When do you want to? And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, how long have you been holding this back? And I was like 5 years? And she's like, "Oh my god." She's like, "Why?" She's like, "We could have been doing that for 5 years." I was like, "Man, that's why." I was like, "Okay, okay." I was like, "Time out. What just scratch whatever I just said. What if I came to you like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, so I was kind of thinking about something, and I know this might sound like weird. It's okay if you say no. It's no big deal." And she was like,
Yeah.
"No." And I was like,
Yeah.
"I didn't even get finished." She's like, "You didn't have to finish." She goes, "If you're not certain about it and you don't feel good about it, why would I feel good about it?" So like
Yeah.
there was proof that like it really triggered unsafety with her, like because I wasn't confident with it.
Yeah. When you're asking for your needs, owning it is such a huge part of that. Owning is such a huge part. And you don't have to communicate to them, it's okay if you don't. You have to know that though in your heart. You have to be like, yeah, like my job and my role in this relationship is to show up authentically. And if that means like for me, it would kind of pop up in uh, like in the air of curiosity. Like, you ever thought about doing something like this in the bedroom? How does that sound to you? Like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like fun, not so fun. Almost like kind of that first date kind of energy. Like, wanting to get to know someone instead of saying like, not apologizing for what you want. Just like, such a crappy thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to be you should never be apologetic about it. Because again, that goes with expectations, right? I mean, like if you're not apologetic about it, and if you can actually be the person that releases it. So like for instance, with that situation, I wouldn't have really thought about Jessica any other way, but I also had it in my mind that she's not rejecting the thing. She's not rejecting me. She just, if she didn't want to do it, she'd be rejecting that thing, not me.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, I think a lot of times we're like, you are looking for validation that what you want or what you need is okay,
Yes.
when it's totally okay. If you have a desire, that's great. And it doesn't have to be such a pressure thing that you bring to your partner, because they don't have to meet you in the way that you want to be met. Part of, I think, the beauty of relationship is being known. And like, I had a funny example of this. Maybe this could be helpful for the listeners. Like, I have a close friend in my life that is like one of my men in my corner, and he's like one of my dudes. And at one point I told him, man, like, it would really help me a lot, since you're like one of my main sources of like masculine drive, and you're my man, like you're the dude in my corner. I would love if, you would tell me that you are proud of me,
Yeah.
more often. That would mean a lot to me.
Yeah.
And and so like, yes, me, and I didn't ask you like, hey, maybe if this isn't weird. I would just straight up and just ask him. And his response when we saw each other was like, I'm I'm so proud of you, and I hope you know that. Like, I think that a lot. I think what you do is great. He gave me some words and kind of thing, and then he was like, but I'm gonna keep it real with you, bro. Like, I'm just not that much of an encouraging person. I just don't really. I'm just not super encouraging. It's just not my kind of personality type. It never's been. This and that and the other, and legitimately, I was like, duh, okay, makes sense to me. Like, even then, now we kind of joke about it. Like, and he's still not like, he hasn't picked up that quality trait or that personality trait. It's not something that he does now. But I like Heidi Priebe, her definition of intimacy is a shared reality. So if even though the behavioral adjustment wasn't made, the request was made, the behavioral adjustment wasn't made, it still brought us closer together, because we have a more complete understanding of the dynamic in our relationship and what's important to each person. Even now, it seems that it's more so a joke that's made that says, hey, I see you, and I remember you told me that, more so than it's like a that person's changed kind of thing.
Yeah, man. And you know what you did there too is you gave that man the gift of a roadmap of, like I think it's always good to vet these things out. Like what you did, I think, from like a positivity side and a benefit side was like, you stated what it is that you wanted, and then he gave him a clear road of like, okay, yeah, I'm. My wife is the same way. She didn't grow up with compliments, and I'm a words of affirmation guy, so she doesn't give a whole lot of compliments. But I also don't take it personal because she's just not wired that way, which is fine. But like another example of this is I think you can also share feedback sometimes that is tough to hear, right? So I've got one of my business partners. We've known each other for 11 years. He's one of my coaches, one of my lead coaches in the boardroom, which is our business owner mastermind. And we're very, very direct with each other, but we've also learned all these skills that we teach. So it's like we can take that kind of stuff. So like an example of this was we took our guys on a retreat. We take them on a retreat once a year, and we went to Cactus to Clouds in Palm Springs, and which is like this crazy gnarly hike. And then we did like masterminding, and so I didn't actually get to go on the hike because I busted my knee last year, and I can't do a hike like that just yet. And so I sent him an audio over text because he was with our guys, and we had a coach that was in the group for a long time leave, and which was fine. I asked him to go, and I sent him an audio, and I said, "Hey, I'm sure on this, several hour hike, you guys are going to run out of things to probably talk about. And here's my ask." And I told him, I was like, "I don't think you would do this, but if this did come up and I didn't say something to you, I would regret not saying something." I was like, "Here's what I ask you to do. Um, Please allow us to announce this, to the entire group, and don't have one-off conversations where it might, turn into something else. Cause then you play telephone, right? Because this person said this, and by the time it gets to the 10th person, it's a completely different story." And so I sent him this over audio purposely. I didn't write it over text because I wanted him to hear the tonality of my voice. I wanted him to hear how I said it and the way I said it. And the next call that we were on next week, he's like, "Hey," he goes, I need to address something with you." And I was like, "Okay, what?" He's like, you sent me this audio." And he's like, "I was pretty fucking annoyed that you would even think that I would do something like that." And I just smiled, and I was like, "Yeah, I can understand that." I was like, "Can I
Yeah.
explain that?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I said, the reason I did that is because on an 18-hour hike, people are going to run out of things to talk about. I really didn't think you would. I said that in the audio. At the same time, I would have regretted not at least sharing that insight with you. And if it would
Yeah.
have come up, it would have caused a riff, I think, in the group. So that was it.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah, man. This is like there's such a lot of giving space to the person to have their reaction, and also honoring whatever you felt like you needed to communicate at that point. I'm
Yeah.
not packaging this up perfectly and saying it's going to land just right. I just know that I need to communicate this. This is important to me, and if I don't, then I'm risking something that I feel like is not riskable.
Right.
What I'm curious to pick your brain on this, man. Asking for your needs, emotional regulation, these are important things. Where do you see a line, and where do you draw it when it comes to protecting the attraction romantically in your relationship with your woman, getting your needs met by co-regulating, yes, but also having external sources of regulation? Like, isn't there a line of sorts where you don't want your partner to become your therapist, but you do want to make sure they're clued in so you experience a deeper level of connection? How do you see that situation? How do you encourage people to walk that line?
That's such a good question. There are several elements in that question. So, you referred to David Data and, The Way of the Superior Man, and all that. I'm a huge fan of G.S. Youngblood.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm actually reading his book right now,
oh yeah. So the masculine relationship, or the art embodiment man.
The Masculine and in Relationship.
It's literally one of my favorite books. I actually, I would call him, I guess, competitive coach, but I refer that book to all of my clients. I'm like, read this. Like,
Yeah,
this literally, it's kind of like No More Mr. Nice Guy on steroids. It's a
yeah,
great book. And GS and I'm honored to call him a friend. I've known him for a couple years. And but when it comes to like his 3-part blueprint, which is, first you have to be responsive and not reactive. So you have to be calm, you have to be regulated, because if you're not regulated, then you cannot co-regulate, which is what you said. We have
mhm,
tremendous influence over the other people around us, especially as men, husbands, and fathers. We are the thermostat in the house. If dad's energy is off, the whole family's going to feel it. So we have to be regulated, right? And there are several different ways to do that. So like for me, I think it's always good for a man to have anchors in his life that helps him to be regulated, whether that's a meditative practice. Me, it's fitness and faith. Every morning I start my morning off with fitness and faith. I'm either in the gym, or I'm going for a long walk, I'm doing something to get my body moving. And then I really dive into the word. So like that helps me tremendously. And then of course there's the practical practices of it too. Like when you feel yourself triggered, it's I'm a big proponent of box breathing and deep diaphragmatic breathing. So that's number one, is you've got to be regulated. Number two is, leading with structure. Leading with structure is a lot like the example that I shared with my client around expectations and boundaries, the way he laid that out for his wife. It's just,
Yeah.
it's leading with tremendous structure. It's not even asking a big question like, hey, our chores aren't really equal. What do you think we should do about it? That's not leading with structure. That's a huge question for her that takes up a lot of mental load. But if you can lead with structure and options, like in that example that I shared, that's leading with structure. And then the last one is to provide safety. Safety is like your voice tone. It's the way that you're operating. It's not necessarily being attached to the outcomes. But from an attraction standpoint, what I find is that a lot of men don't have those anchors in their life. And instead we do the opposite. So instead of having the positive, healthy anchors, we go to alcohol, porn, or weed to numb whatever's we're feeling. And then we just disassociate and disconnect even more. So like that's usually more salt in the wound when we're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You said something that's interesting to me, quoting G.S. Youngblood, I guess, or paraphrasing. We have to be regulated before we can co-regulate.
Yeah.
From my understanding, co-regulation, and I could be wrong on this, I don't know much about it. I just kind of have like a dusty file in the back of my brain. Co-regulation is the practice of being dysregulated and regulating with another person's nervous system, or is it what?
That's a great question. The way I understood it when I read his books, he's been on my podcast. We also hosted a men's event back in April called the Men's Forge. He was one of the speakers there, and then I've been reading his book again. I just every time I read it, I
yeah.
But like, so the regulation and co-regulation. So like, take example of if your kid does something wrong, or you're pissed off at your kid or whatever, or actually let's take a different scenario. Your kid is irate, right, about something. And usually, whether it's a meltdown, or it's your daughter freaking out over something, or your son is having like some sort of meltdown, losing his crap, one of the things that we do is we jump into that emotional pool with them, because it's actually really difficult for most men to take on big emotions. It's hard for us. It's like we were kind of taught from a young age, at least, my generation, probably yours too, is like, don't feel your emotions, stuff it down, white knuckle it, put your head down, be a man, grow a set of balls, right? But there's a time and a place for that, but it doesn't teach us emotional IQ, which is also associated with emotional regulation. So if we can't regulate our own emotions, how in the world are we going to co-regulate somebody else? So like, one of the best things you can do, like, let's just say your daughter is erratic, she's flipping out at like one of her girlfriends did this, or this. If you get erratic with her, you're not co-regulating her. You're basically throwing kerosene on the campfire of that situation. But if you can be that man that is like, man, that sounds really frustrating. Tell me more about that. What's going on? And she's, and then just that nice, calm voice tone where you're regulated, you're helping her get regulated. That's the way I understood it from his book.
What if you're on the opposite end? What if you're feeling this activation, you're feeling these needs, and now what's kind of your framework for like, do I take this neediness that I have to the partnership and get co-regulated, or I need to deal with this alone before returning to the partnership?
That's a great question. I think having a deep connection with your wife is really, really important, but I never think your wife should be your therapist. And this is where I think men need community so bad. I mean, 70% of men out there report feeling lonely. And I think it's like 82% of men don't even have a 3 a.m. friend. If shit hit the fan, they don't know who they call. So I think, I always tell guys this, let your wife in on 60 to 70%. But before you take anything to her, run that past a group of your trusted advisors, whether you're in a mastermind, whether you have a therapist, whether you have a coach, whether you have a good friend. Like, and I'm not talking about your drinking buddy friend where everything is fine, good, crazy, and boring. Like, those are the conversations, like a good friend who can call you forward. But it's like, you can take a situation that feels really heavy to you And it feels like a lot of times our situations can feel like, 13 ping pong balls of things in your head, and you can't even clarify what's going on. So I
Yeah.
always like to have, like, for me, I always need a good friend to go and have these conversations with first before I go and talk to Jessica, because then when I go to talk to her, I'm more calm, I'm more clear, because if I go to her erratic, it's going to make her erratic. There are times and
Yeah.
places she can handle that, but the majority of the time they just, quite frankly, they don't take that very well.
It seems like I'm learning something in the middle of this conversation about what's your hard timeout? It's 2:03.
I probably got like 15 more minutes.
Cool, for sure. Um, it seems like you're being intentional with this strategy of you've got this activation going on. Let's go get regulated through relationship, because that's like the healthy regulation is like, let's get regulated through relationship with others, not booze, pornography, drugs. That's kind of the more the avoidant attachment style. I'll be by myself, take care of myself through things that are non-human. Go get regulated via conversation with the people that you love and care about, that are kind of on your side and you trust to really give you good guidance, and hold your romantic partnership in a place that's separate from that, that then you can bring them in and give them the vulnerable side of like, yeah, I've really been, maybe at the Friday lunch at the restaurant you guys go to, like, it's been a hard week. I've been struggling with a little bit of indecisiveness with the direction of my business, or, I've been really just having a lot of anxiety this week about, this, that, and the other. But you can, like you're saying, because you did the job of regulating prior, you can bring them in without feeling like you're dumping it on them, saying like, be a mommy to me, which is, I think, probably the thing that we're trying to avoid in relationships when men are communicating. Invite them in to understand you at a deeper level and a more vulnerable level, but don't ask them to take on your emotional regulation needs. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if you can do that like 80, 90% of the time, and then I'll give you something else that you can do the other 10 to 20%. So, me and Jessica have a code phrase, and I use it more than she does, because she'll just talk to me about anything. Like when it comes to, like, I mean, she'll just vent, and like, but guys have a hard time with that. But like, if I'm in a state where, like, and let's just say like nothing that week seems right, like it could be like crap went sideways in the business. Um, one of our kids just did this or that, it could be a variety of different things that like kind of all pile up. And what I'll do with Jess is I mean, I've known her for 30 years, so she detects like that kind of stuff from a mile away anyway. But I'll say, hey, can I give you some shitty first draft emotions? Yeah, I learned that from a podcast guest. This guy, I was like, shitty first draft emotions. What's that? He's like, this is where people just kind of like openly talk, like, and they just like literally just, there's almost like no filter in a way. You don't get like crazy or angry or mad, but you literally just say a lot of things that are on your mind and how you feel about them. And then the other person just listens. And
Yeah.
so like, when I first gave her this term, she's like, "What is that?" And I told her, and she's like, and now she like, I don't do it that often, but when I do it, she's like, "Oh yeah, what do you got?" Right? But if I were
Yeah.
to
Yeah, it's
just
tea, by the way. That's what you call tea.
yeah, right, right. I mean, that's actually, you're kind of teeing up the conversation for what she can expect. Now, if I just went in, cold, and I just like started dumping all this stuff on her, it'd
Yeah,
probably be a
yeah.
lot. But if I were to say, "Hey, can I give you some shitty first draft emotions?" and then she's like, "Yeah, what do you got?" And I'll just talk out loud. I'll be like, okay, so this is going on. This is really frustrating for me. I got this going on. And like, I can't seem to connect with Mason. Like, he's never home. Like, and I just like, and I'll go, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll be done after a few minutes of that. And what that did for me is it provided me some clarity and an outlet. But my wife is also really logical. She's a great sounding board. So she'll be like, here's some of the things that I heard, and maybe some things to think about, because she also knows when I go to her, I'm not going just to vent. Like, I really want her advice. And then
Yeah.
she always has like the most simplest logical advice. So like, but I'll always give her a heads up that shitty first draft emotions are coming.
I love that, man. I think it's really cool that, like, to even pull from J.S. Youngblood's framework for masculine and relationship is the structure thing. You can buy yourself the opportunity to be unstructured by introducing with structure.
Yeah.
I'm going to start this clock for 15 minutes, and I'm just going to kind of just but when that's up, we're good. Like, so that way she's not sitting there trying to catch everything and go, when's this going to end?
Right.
Yeah. That's super cool, man. I want to be respectful of your time. I really appreciate the conversations today, man. And just the expertise that you bring to masculine and relationship from the GS Young stuff, just in general, how men can show up better in relationships and communicating, all that stuff. It was a pleasure chatting with you last time and just as much this time, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. This was a lot of fun, man. It's good to be back, and you're a great interviewer. And if I could say anything, man, those of you guys who are listening to, to Brax, he doesn't know I'm gonna say this, but if you've gotten anything from Brax's show, man, just take a moment as soon as you're done listening to this, leave this man, a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple or whatever else, and just maybe be specific with 1 or 2 sentences of some gold he's given you. Like we give our heart and souls to these podcasts, and the best way to repay us is just to leave a review.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that, man. And you have a book coming out in a couple months. Where can people get that?
Yeah, so
the book coming out.
Yeah, the audiobook should be coming out by the end of July, but the book has been out since last September, but it's called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. So it's basically, as I refer to it, it's kind of like everything that we've taught over the past 10 years. It's divided up into 4 parts. One is the drift, and to explain that to men, then it's marriage, fatherhood, and leader. And yeah, there's literally everything encompassing in that book that we've ever taught about raising kids, about being a dad, about being a husband, a man. Everything is in there.
Yeah, wonderful. And if someone really enjoyed this conversation with Larry and wants to find out more about the work that you do, maybe the coaching one-on-one, what's the best for them to contact you?
I mean, just if you go to, info@the-edge, I answer all of those emails. You can just drop me a line if you want. I always tell people start with the podcast. I just crossed over 1,500 podcasts. So I got enough content out there to keep you busy for like a decade. But I always tell people start with the podcast. The Dad Edge podcast is everywhere where podcasts are downloaded.
It's wonderful, man. Thank you again for your time, Larry.
Thank you.